Hey everybody, it's Kevin here with Aging Ash and Sticky Balls. We are going to do a bit of a postseason recap beginning with the ALCS. But first, I'm pretty sure the following kind of describes the mood that all Red Sox fans are in right now.
And then depression set in.
So before everybody gets depressed, let's just say this, and I think you guys would agree. This was a huge leap forward for this team coming from last year, everything that had gone on. They went into spring training looking like an afterthought. And we'll get into that more come our recap, but let's talk about, everybody wants to point at the pitching, but let's talk about the real thing that brought them down in the series against the Astros, and that was the bats. You have guys, Devers delivered. Hernandez had a good series, obviously. He was batting almost 400. But after that, all the guys you expect to deliver are under 200. They're not driving in runs at the right time. How uncharacteristic was that, or wasn't that, from the regular season that we saw rely on those bats? And I'll start with you, Matt.
I wouldn't say it didn't stray too far from the regular season. I think what killed us was just our bats being so hot for the games 2 and 3 when you score 12 runs and then like 9 runs. It just, your bats kind of run out of steam. I didn't think they'd go as ice cold as they did. Score, obviously, with getting 2 runs or 3 runs post game 3. But it happened during regular season where they'd have a game, I think it was like against the Rays, where we scored 20, and then the next game we scored like 1. Like it just kills you. And I was like, why couldn't we have won those games like 5-3, and then like saved like 4 or 5 of those runs for game 4, and well, we wouldn't have to worry about blowing that lead. And we're up 3-1. It's just stuff like that. Yeah, I think that's what made it more frustrating for me, was that it was the bats that went cold. If it had just been the pitching that failed, I would have been fine. I would have been like, that's what I was expecting. Like, our pitching just isn't the best. But it was our bats. And it just, from what, so hot. And people were asking me if the series was over after game 3. And I said, how can you even make that statement? Like, this is baseball. We could be up 3-1. I still don't think the series is over. And then sure enough, I felt confident. 2-1. I was nervous. Game 5, bats, or game 4, bats still weren't there, and then Whitlock gives it up. If we had held the lead in the 9th, or kept the tie, I think we went on a walk-off, and I think we're up 3-1. And when we coasted that series, I think at that point the Astros are dead. But the bats just, like, getting out hit by Alvarez in games 5 and 6 is just disgusting. Like, that's just unfathomable to deal with as an offense, especially as potent as an offense as we have. And it was frustrating and just demoralizing to watch that, just the fall off from even the first few innings of game 3.
Joey, what are your thoughts about the bats gone silent? And was that something you saw coming, or is that something that surprised you?
Nothing. It didn't. It definitely surprised me. Something I did not see coming. A lot. I agree with a lot of what Matt said, especially like everyone knew like the offense is there. Like, you're having Kyle Schwarber play first base because your offense is so loaded that you need his bat to get in there because it's such a good bat, and you can't put on a DH because it's a good bat, and your outfield has great bats, and like you had top to bottom, your catcher was your lacking position, your second baseman when Kiki was in center, but you had great bats, and they proved they could hit in Fenway, they could hit on the road. They had 2 grand slams in 2 innings in Minute Maid Park. Like, they proved that they could beat that team. And I don't know, like, I'm obviously Friday night I was down, but then like I came to peace with it yesterday. It wasn't, I don't know if it's because if you told me back in March that they're going to lose in the ALCS, I would have signed up for that in a minute just to like get that. And that's why, and they had this underdog and this no one believes in us thing. So there wasn't like expectations that they blew, but I was okay with it, which was shocking. But I was almost glad that it was so pitiful how bad their bats were. Because if they lost at Fenway 6-5, and then they lost at Fenway 3-2, and then they lost in Minute Maid like 9-8, that would have been like some gut wrenching performances. That like the bats showed up like we expected them to, and the pitching blew it like we kind of expected them to. But the pitching was just phenomenal for what they had. For what, like, Eduardo Rodriguez probably just pitched him into a contract with the Red Sox next year with just the way he shoved. I think we'll get to that either this episode or next episode. I think the way he showed out, the way he gets along with Cora, if he wants to stay, I think they'll stay with him. That is another thing I think we'll get to. And I hated that move by Erod. I loved Cora yelling at him, but the pitching showed up, the guys who came in, and it was just the only problem with the pitching was you got 2 outs on him every single goddamn time, and you gave up hits. Altuve had 3 hits. 2 of them were home runs that basically won them the games. And they set the records for how many runs they scored with 2 outs. It was absurd. That was the only problem with the pitching. But when you look at Sale in that game and what he gave you out there, sign up for that any night. What Evaldi gave to you the other night, he was the perfect guy. Especially when they got in the 5th inning, 2nd and 3rd after the Alvarez double to left field, no outs. Evaldi had a strikeout all game and strikes out the next 3 batters, 2 of them being Correa and Tucker, and like threw his nuts on the table. Like the pitchers showed up. Sale screaming into his glove. The pitchers showed up, and the bats were nowhere to be found. And it was so awkward to watch because, like we said, that they were so lively. They're the heart of this team, and they're putting up pitiful at bats in there. Every pitch was a weak ground ball or a pop up to an infielder. They weren't even driving the ball. And like Matt said, Alvarez out hit you in games 5 and 6 combined. He had 7 hits. You had combined 6. Like how that's even possible. I guess that's the other problem with the pitchers. They kept throwing fastballs to Yordan Alvarez and letting him do whatever the hell he wanted. But I'm okay with it now, but it was the complete opposite. If you had me to script this series in any way, saying that the offense was as hot as they were, and then when as cold as they did, while the pitching stayed as great as they were, I would not have seen that coming.
Well, first of all, I gotta agree with Matt on a couple things here. It kills me how the local, especially sports radio, trips over themselves to try to be smarter than everybody else, and they, after they had won. What was it, game 3 down or back at home, or game 2 back at home? Down in Houston. Can't remember, but exactly. But they were celebrating, victory. And they're the same people that'll turn around and, call you an idiot for thinking the Red Sox could have even made the playoffs. But anyway, I'm kind of going off on a tangent because, as you can see, I'm in a beautiful hotel in East Aurora, New York, on my 4th week of travel. So anyway, as far as the pitching's concerned, I was worried about Sale up until he pitched in Game 5, and that took away a lot of the worries because I hadn't seen the Chris Sale I had seen 2 years ago, and his track record in the playoffs wasn't that great. So let me ask you this, Joey, were you concerned about Sale? Do you think they brought him back too early, or do you think he was kind of rushing things behind the scenes because he obviously wasn't himself up until that last start, in my opinion?
Yeah, I agree with you. He definitely was. And even going back to August and September, he wasn't Chris Sale. Even though, looking at it, I thought that, this October run could be perfect because it would technically be his June or July. That's where Chris Sale peaks, and then everyone knows he falls off towards the end just because his arm motions or whatever. But I think it was probably just 18 months off from baseball. He just didn't have it, the age of being 18 months older, whatever. But I always said, if it came down to it, and Evaldi couldn't go, I want the ball in Sale's hands. He's just a gamer. He's going to take it personal. And like you said, Game 5, he goes out there. He didn't pitch 7 innings, but no one does that in the playoffs anymore. That's unheard of. So he went out there and did what he had to do, and he showed emotion, and he got you out of jams, and he got guys out, and that's all you could ask for. And if they had forced a game 7 and Sale had to pitch an inning on short rest, I would have believed that he could have done it. Like once Eovaldi took over that spot this year, and especially just going in October, like, oh, this is your guy. This is Nate. This is what he's going to do. He's your ace. I feel it almost took a little bit more pressure off Sale. If we were still sitting here being like, well, we have nobody except for Sale, there would have been a little bit more. But with what Sale was providing you and the position he fell into your rotation, I was very much okay with what he performed. I think next year he'll have a better year. He'll have his normal winter, off-season, spring training, and I think he'll be fine. He'll be older, but guys usually perform better when they're on off Tommy John after it, and he's getting this 3-month kind of like test period to deal with it. And so next year I feel very confident with him going forward.
Your thoughts, Matt, on Sale and whether or not the organization or he himself kind of tried to speed things up as the playoffs looked like a possibility?
I don't think that they necessarily rushed him back. I think that they just didn't have any consistency when he came back. It seemed like his starts were spaced like irregularly. Like they were having him go every Friday, which is not typical for a pitcher. Pitchers typically go every 5 days. Then he'd go like 4 days later. Like it just seemed like whenever he started, it never seemed like it was in a consistent routine. And I think I say this all the time. It's probably a broken record on. But when I say this, I'm a big fan of consistency and routines when it comes to baseball. I think baseball players are very unique creatures and that they like things a certain way. They're very superstitious. They're very like everything's boom, boom, boom to the point. So I think with him not starting, getting that regular every 5 days, I think it messed with his mentality. I don't think it was him rushing back. I also just think the thought of the fact that whenever he'd face any sort of danger, like he'd give up like 1 run in 2 innings and they'd pull him. Like it was just like, I think that was on his mind too. Like I have to be perfect. And I think that gets the pitcher. Like I think that gets to him because game 5 until I think it was like the 6th inning or whatever, the 5th inning, he was elite, pitching great against the Astros, shutting him down, allowed 1 run. I think it was on the Jordan blast, but
Bregman.
Like just elite showing pumping 98, showing that he is still truly our ace in my opinion. Eovaldi is pitching like he's our ace, but I think Chris Sale, if you had to ask me who's our ace, who's our leader of the pitching staff, I'm going to say Chris Sale. Well, it's great to see it. So, yeah.
No, I think mentally he'll always be that guy. He's a bulldog. He could be, close to 50 in an old timers game and still try to, bring it to 85 or whatever. But the way they pitched him, I think you make a good point again, Matt, is that to me, if they're on the borderline or there's a couple teams ahead of them and they're in the fight for the wild card, I don't think you see Sale other than a congratulations start here, maybe a spot start there. I don't think they try. I don't think he gets ramped up as quickly, whether that's his fault, whether that's the organizational's and or just the fact, like Joey said, it's 18 months away from baseball. He hasn't thrown a pitch in anger in so long, and it takes even the greats, it takes a while to get your timing back. But
yeah.
Let's move on to a deeper dive on the offense as far as the ALCS is concerned. I mean, a lot was made about Devers, but he was productive. He hit near 300. But let me ask you this: if you had your choice of a line of 2 home runs, 6 RBIs, 235 batting average, or 1 home run, 4 RBIs, 120 batting average going into next season for your that's basically JD Martinez and Schwarber's line against Houston. Martinez has the opt-out, which again we'll talk more about in another show, but those guys didn't show up after being leaned upon so much. The offense really came from two spots, and that was from third base Devers and Hernandez. So what's your feeling about those two? Do you think they should have done something maybe to take Schwarber and off the bench and maybe start a Dahlbach or something like that, just to create a spark before you got down to the final game 6? Matt, I'll start with you.
I mean, I'm the first person to ever doubt Cora, but I honestly think that they set the lineup properly. Those are our guys. They got cold for a 3-game series. Like, they just had a slump of 3 games. It just happened to come at the most important 3 games of our season. And it sucks to see, and I hate it. But to say that I don't feel confident with any of those guys in our lineup besides Arroyo and Vasquez, who were 8 and 9 for a reason. Like, I wasn't really too, but JD, Bogarts, Schwarber, all Renfroe just didn't show up. And it sucks at the time it came at, but I still do trust their bats moving forward. And we'll get into this later episodes, but I hope that those 4 names I just listed are on the 2022 Red Sox. Because I think that there is some kind of spark to their offense. I think not even if the production, I just think the mentality too of what JD and Schwarber bring to a lineup. And that's why I think that they should be in the lineup, is just the pitches that they take. I think it was in game 6, Schwarber had nuts of stealing one at bat. He took 2 pitches legit that probably chipped the glass. Like, might have, but he just took them, not even flinched. And I was like, that's how well he sees the strike zone. And somebody like that, I need that in the lineup, taking pitches. We needed to get Garcia and Valdez Valdez and then Garcia out of the game, because they're just walking over us. It wasn't even a series when they were on the mound. They were unhittable, and they were unhittable in the regular season too. So I think they just have our number, those 2 pitchers. I don't know why, but we need people like that to just take pitches, grind at bats. That even if they're only hitting a $143, which they probably went 2 for 14, which is over the series. Yeah, obviously you want more production, but I'll take it.
Yep. Yeah, he went 3 for 25.
3 for 21. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just like, yeah. And
I hate people who can do math, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's like Joseph Altuve. Altuve had 3 hits the entire series. It's that 2 of them were blasts. One of them tied the game in game 1, or gave him the lead, either tied or gave him the lead in game 1, and then the one in game 4 tied the game in the 8th against Whitlock. Biggest hit of the series, turning point. He doesn't get that homer. Sox go up 3-1. Sox likely win that series. So it's like a bloop and a blast. Like, they just had the blast. And it sucks that our offense just wasn't what we needed it to be from the guys that we lean upon to be those guys. But it was only 3 games, and it was just the emphasis on those games that makes it so much harder. If those were 3 games in July where they batted 143, no one bats an eye. But it's just that it was games 4, 5, and 6 of the ALCS.
And that whistle, something about that whistle. Joey, your thoughts on basically 2 guys carrying the offense against the Astros, and what that means going forward if JD does elect to opt out of his contract, which I doubt he will.
I think what Matt said, I want both of them back, the lefty righty. They're both. I was going to start this with, like, JD's a professional hitter, but what Matt said in game 6. That home plate umpire was unbelievable, and those 2 balls that Schwarber didn't swing at that he called balls, I couldn't believe he called them balls. I couldn't believe Kyle didn't move the bat. Both of those guys know the zone so perfectly that when they tell you it's a ball, they're right 99% of the time. Having those guys as your 3-4 hitters next year would be unbelievable. Then it comes to, how you're positioning them. Is Kyle at first, or is one of them in left, DH, rotating? that's another thing for time to figure out this offseason. But I'd love for them to be back. I think they're very good clubhouse guys. I think they're very good older mentors for these younger players. They help them, and they're just unbelievable. You have to get one of them back. I'd love both. And Schwarber, he had the luck of he had the grand slam and he had the whole Kyle from Waltham thing run off. And I think people didn't realize that he had just really one hit in the series that meant anything. There was something, I think, game 5 or something. He struck out 3 times on 9 pitches or something for the first time ever in his career. You saw 9 strikes, had 3 strikeouts. It was unbelievable what he did. He was not good, and he was in the lineup spot. And I agreed with what Matt said and what Cora said going into Game 6. This is our lineup. This is what we're going with. Bobby Dahlbeck hadn't gotten an at-bat in a month. Same thing with Danny Santana. Same thing with anyone else on your bench besides Plawecki. So I didn't think it was the time to switch it up. It was very weird to switch it up in the 8th inning of the ALCS. Well, it was still only a 2-run game, and you have Bobby Dahlbeck playing second, and that was weird. But going into the game, I was fine with it. To me, the biggest surprise was Renfroe. I thought every night, I was tonight's going to be known as the Renfroe night. This is the night he hits 2 home runs, has a double. He was the one guy. Arroyo, I could see being a guy he had the 1 home run in the blowout game, but Arroyo's Arroyo, good home run. Don't expect much. Same thing with Vasquez. But Renfroe, to me, was the biggest disappointment on offense, and he was dead there. And I'm a big believer in home runs can be rally killers. I'd much rather get 6 singles. It just has to feed off that. And in those last 2 games, they never got that opportunity. Xander hit the home run in the first inning, then nothing else happened. And in the second game, you had Kike had the triple, and when it came to the stolen base and the hit and run, I was fine with that. You had to be aggressive. You had to get something, and it was a perfect throw to get Verdugo, and he didn't have a good jump, but you have to – it's baseball. You have to get momentum. You have to get something going. They just never got it, and it was top to bottom. It wasn't every time Schwarber came out, the bases were loaded, and he was striking out, and he was ending it. Nothing happened. Verdugo did good hitting, but they didn't have any big time hits. We talked about Renfroe. And Bogarts, kind of same thing. Didn't have anything big. And Devers to me was make or break it. If you look at his line, obviously he was very good. He had timely hits, but his outs were either ugly or he was popping it up. You could tell he had discomfort in his arm. Sometimes I was there's a big problem here. Then you go out and crush a baseball and be okay, no, he's fine. So he was all over the place. It was just a really weird thing to see. I hope I'll circle back to Schwarber, JD. I think they balanced the lineup. I think they set a precedent in the middle of it that you can't pitch around, and you always have one there over the other one. It's just going to be how you're going to balance them in the field next year. And I think they're 2 guys that would like to stay here. Unless the NL adds the DH, then I think they're both instantly gone because suddenly there's 15 new teams calling them. But if that doesn't happen, the AL keeps it, I think you have a strong chance of bringing them both back to at least 1-year deal with them to prove it deals, run it back deals, or not JD, but Schwarber with it.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the pitching now, and a guy that we haven't spoken much about because he hasn't deserved to be spoken much about, and that's Matt Barnes. I mean, I think most people will tell you when they build a bullpen that you start your base is your closer. Sometimes you're lucky enough to be able to have a guy designated for that 8th inning role. And the rest is going to the local bar and playing bar Yahtzee, Sometimes you hit, sometimes you miss, you don't know. A bullpen fluctuates throughout the year. But having the fact that Barnes had pretty much had a mental breakdown going into September, they didn't have any particular closer. They didn't have defined roles in the bullpen. I mean, it was kind of hit or miss. And I think with a pitching staff that's this fragile, you got to have at least that one guy that can come in, whether the save is in the 7th or the save is in the 9th. He comes in and shuts the door. Barnes obviously wasn't that guy. How concerned are you guys about the way he affected this run? And whether or not he's built for the role. And we'll start with you, Joey.
To me, the whole Barnes situation, I feel it didn't get enough talk throughout the postseason. It was just kind of Barnes is off off, and that was it. And people kind of swept under the rug. But I look at almost like Malcolm Butler not playing in the Super Bowl versus the Eagles, and that if you had Matt Barnes, and like Matt said, we hit 3 games where the offense went cold. You could have sparked and gotten 3 appearances from Matt Barnes where he was dominant and the curveball was working, and suddenly you just won this series probably in 4 or 5 games because the 2 Altuve hits were off Whitlock and Houck, 2 rookies who will probably be starters the rest of their career, who are pitching and coming in late inning games in October, and they're rookies, and they give up home runs to now the guy with like the second most ever postseason home runs. So but if that was Barnes, he could have just clicked it. The fact it was brushed under the rug on why Heim just gave him all this money. He deserved it at the time. I understood giving him the deal in July because if he kept on his run, he probably wouldn't have signed a deal with you an extension late in September. He would have gone to the free agent market. I think he could even be a Boris guy if I'm correct. I might be wrong on that, but he was here. I just feel it was weird to give other people opportunities over him, not even to have him there. And then the same thing with was Austin Davis hurt at all? Is that why he wasn't there?
I think he was.
Martin Perez.
But I don't know, like Davis, like you picked him up, Heim. That was one of your trade deadline moves, and he was good for what he is. And then he was left off. Like there was questions there on why these guys weren't there. I'd rather ride or die with the guy you traded for and the guy you gave the money for, instead of throwing out Martin Perez, who no one even expected to be on this team, and then to re-sign him in the offseason. People expect him to get DFA'd half a dozen times throughout this year, and was surprising. And you picked him, and you have 2 rookies who overperformed all year and have great futures ahead of them. And they gave up 2 untimely home runs to a guy that is going to be a borderline Hall of Famer with just his postseason stats. But when it comes to the defining the roles, I think Cora mostly has proven he can win without defining these roles. In 18, he said Sale close out the World Series. He pitched Evaldi in the 9th inning on Wednesday night in Game 5. He had guys ready. In the clincher versus the Rays, he had Sale warming up if they had taken the lead in the bottom of the 8th. Like he is fine with pitching, taking every game one game at a time, whatever it takes, whatever the hot arm is. I just found it very concerning and weird that Barnes and Davis were both left off of this roster. No one really talked about it. And like Matt said, all it takes is one good outing, or maybe you just need one out when you brought in Martin Perez in Game 5 and he gives up Brantley the bases clearing double. What happens if that was Austin Davis? What happens if Barnes came in and snapped a curveball and got him to strike out? Just not even giving those guys opportunities was very weird to me, and I feel like there has to be more behind the scenes that just hasn't been uncovered.
Your thoughts, Matt?
I think the biggest bullpen conversation that never got discussed or had the biggest role is Garrett Richards. Garrett Richards being hurt for the second half of the ALDS and the ALCS, I think goes so under the radar. If he's our closer, in my opinion, if he's healthy. I don't know if I jinxed it in Game 4, but when Willock got out of the 7th, I said Willock will come in the 8th. I said, and who closes this game? I wasn't sure. I was like, probably Robles. I was like, I don't know if I like that, but I said that's the move. And I can't stand that's even a question. I'm the biggest bullpen first baseball fan of all time. I think that you win by having an elite bullpen. I think teams like the Rays demonstrate that with having no-name guys that you've never heard of, all of a sudden blow 100 by you, and you're like, is this guy got like, they signed him, he sent in the video on Instagram, and they signed him last night. Like, but here he is throwing 100. and they have this science or something that they're just geniuses down in the Berg, where they just pump out these guys, these no names that are just bullpen studs. And I think too many times people rely on big names to be bullpen guys, and I don't think that's the piece. So I think having that inconsistency, like you talked about 18, Joey, and I think with the World Series it's different. I think when it's World Series, nobody has a spot. It's you go when you're ready, like you go when you're called upon. It's all hands on deck. We've got 7 games left in the season to win us the most prized championship in all of baseball. So I think it's different, but with the whole roles, but I think you do need roles earlier on in the playoffs. And I think it showed by not having any consistency in the pen. Bringing in Otto for one batter in Game 4 kind of killed the use of him. As much as people don't like Ottavino, I think he's good. If Game 6 he gives up that homer, but I mean I think I could have hit it out at Minute Maid on that homer. From front row in the short porch, that's it, fly out every other park. And
not at Fenway Park. We would have
probably would have hit the scoreboard.
found a way to drop it if it was playable.
Yeah. But like Barnes, yeah, like I think I was talking with Joey or just our group chat when they announced the lineup, and I said we just paid $14 million for 2 years for a guy that's not even on our postseason roster. And I said, I can't stand that. Like, I don't know if it's me just trying to keep face or like, I think you got to throw him out there. Like,
I agree.
I don't care how his numbers, like, there is a reason why we did give him that money. There is something behind that. He was our all-star closer. Best closer in the AL at the start of the season, without a doubt. There is something to that. He has the stuff. That's why I'm not nervous moving forward with him. I don't like him being our closer. I like him being our eighth inning guy. I've never liked Matt Barnes being our closer, but I didn't mind at the start of the year when he had a whip below 1 and the ERA below 1. I was all for it, and I was like, finally all this untapped potential from, I remember when he was called up in like 2015, like Matt Barnes is going to be a great starter, and they're like, well, actually he sucks. We're moving to the bullpen. They're like, yeah, he still kind of sucks here. Also, it's like, oh, all of a sudden he's this stud. I was like, I'm all for it. I like Matt Barnes. He's a great guy. I've got a photo with him right up on my wall. Love Matt Barnes, Matty Backpacks. But not having him or Big Fudge on the postseason, on the ALCS roster, killed us, in my opinion. Martin Perez should not have been. I don't care that we gave him a contract of $7 million. He's a starter. He did not earn to be in the bullpen pitching. Like, he got moved to the bullpen. Garrett Richards got his contract. They moved him to the bullpen, and he earned that money. He was worth the $10 million in our bullpen. I will say that, without a doubt. He was a stud out of the pen. Perez did not deserve to be on any postseason roster. He deserved to be gone. There's another guy I'll hopefully get to talk about later about him not deserving to be on our postseason roster, and he struck out in Game 6 on a big at-bat. But
well, I'll tell you what, you're gonna have to save that because I'm gonna try to be upbeat. Other than saying, look up the name Scott Cooper because he made the All-Star team once too, and I think he might be better than Matt Barnes, even though he wasn't even a one-hit wonder. Barnes, I think you'll see he's going to end up as being one of the most expensive setup guys in the market. I think they lost all trust in him. But getting away from the negative, we'll save all the nitpicking for our breakdown show of the season coming up this weekend. But on a positive note, I mean, one of these things that drew this team to so many people, or drew so many people to this team, is the fact that they always fought back. They even when it looked impossible, they found a way to get back. It was an ultimate end that was coming. And Joey, you're probably right. It's probably easier that they got their brains bashed in instead of, creating false hope, because as we said when we started the show, nobody thought they were going to be in the playoffs. So one of the best things that this team brought back is the feeling of October baseball like it hasn't been in almost a decade, in my opinion. Unexpected run, guys everybody liked, really didn't always believe in the team unless you're on a radio station. Somebody hands you a script and tells you it's all over. But your thoughts just on the fact that they had to fight down to the wire. They had to beat the Yankees to get in. They beat a heavily favored Rays team to get here. And, they gave these guys a hell of a fight, even though, trash cans and whistles, they only go so far. But let's talk about the positives, wrapping it up on how you feel about the base that was laid this year in the playoffs, and how people shouldn't be all bummed out. They should be happy and excited for next season. And I will start with you, Matt.
Obviously, everybody knows how much I can't stand Chaim Bloom. So, no, he laid the bricks for what is a dynasty, and people didn't even realize that coming into the season. At the start of the season, my record prediction was 89-73. And we're posting it there. And our group chat people said, that's optimistic. I said, that's me lowballing it. My real record was like 94 wins. That's just because I'm a Red Sox fan. So I was like 89 wins, realistically speaking, with the roster I saw. I liked our rotation. I didn't love it. I liked our pen. I didn't love it. I loved our offense. And all those things came to fruition. Like, luckily, 3 wins better than what I was expecting. But like you said, if you had, like Joey said at the start of this podcast, if you had told me on October 2nd, 2020, that the Red Sox would lose in the ALCS in Game 6 in 2021, I'd be like, signing as fast as I could. Take that. I don't care that I'm guaranteeing us a loss in the ALCS. I would not care. To get to watch exciting baseball in October. Joey was the set in where he said he was fine yesterday, and it all set in. I was miserable. I don't know what I'm going to do for the next 6 months. Everybody talks about, there's the Patriots and the Celtics. No, baseball's the only sport that matters, in my opinion. That is a hill I will die on. It's the only sport that truly matters. I'm like Jimmy Fallon in Fever Pitch. That is the only thing I care about. So I'm just like, I guess it's off-season moves is my next move. But so I am still in this kind of like, but that's only because I didn't feel like that after 2020. I wasn't like, oh man, I can't wait to watch the team next year. I always am because I just love baseball. But this year I'm like, I can't wait till 2022. This team is legit. I don't think it is a fluke. I think we overperformed a little bit this year, but I don't think it's like we're not going to compete next year. We got to keep in mind, not only did we beat the Yankees and the Rays, we also were in the toughest division I've ever seen. Between people are forgetting about the Blue Jays, the Mariners won everybody's heels. Like, there were 6 or 7 teams above 90 wins in the American League. That is unheard of. That teams were just all out this year. Of course, there's a lot of bad teams in Baltimore and Texas that really scraped the barrel, but it was a dogfight. And I think that if we were in any other division, if we're in the NL East, we win that division by like 5-6 games. People are like, wow, this Sox team is legit. But it's just the fact that we in the same division as the Rays and the Yankees and the Blue Jays that all just beat each other's heads in for 19 games apiece a season. So it makes it harder to really show up with a record. Tampa was able to do that miraculously because they're a legit franchise, and I think that's where we're heading. We are the Tampa Bay Rays with their statistics and their brains and their mentality, but with deep pockets. We are a perfect combination of the Rays and the Yankees.
That's
the Yankees. Yeah, but is it the Dodgers? Because the Dodgers are about to burn out and they only won 1 World Series. Like, I think that we are better than the Dodgers. We have made it to 1 World Series, and we won that 1 World Series. We had the same amount of World Series, and ours came in the 162-game season compared to a COVID season, which you can count it. I don't. Even if the Red Sox won in 2020, I don't count it. It's illegitimate. Celtics win in the bubble, I don't count it. I count it because LeBron with them being doesn't matter. But the Sox are building to be a dynasty, and it was exciting. I think this is just a glimpse. This was just a little taste of the chocolate, a little glimmer of what it can be. This is nothing compared to what the next 3 to 5 years are going to be. I almost came on with a sign saying 2023 champs. I can't say 2022. Yeah, that's a hard thing to say. Say next year, but we are going to win 2 World Series in the next 5 years. I truly believe that, and I'm so excited. And all this positive, as depressed and upset as I was on Friday, I was like, I was never expecting this. I expected them to compete for the playoffs, but I never expected losing the ALCS. I've said it. I said they beat the Rays, but that's all like wishful Red Sox thinking. And it came to fruition, and every game was exciting. And even when we were on a skid, I was like, oh, we're going to come back. And so I am looking forward to 2022 like I never have before after any season, even after 2018. I've never been more excited for the future of the Boston Red Sox. I think we are on the things that we can't comprehend even as Boston fans.
Joey, You that giddy?
I want to be. I hope I will sign a contract right now and for what Matt just laid out. I hope that's what happens. Just a quick side note on moving on so fast. The Patriots scoring 50 points today probably definitely helped me move on. That is the only other thing. The Celtics and the Bruins, I have to wait till the spring to see the playoffs and start paying attention to them. But Patriots, they're not going anywhere. But today was fun because of that. And it is weird, though, being a normal sports city, I guess, that usually anytime the Red Sox did lose, it was like, okay, well, getting ready for the AFC Championship game now. Not having that guaranteed is a weird feeling for the first time ever. But the groundwork's there. The thing I'm afraid of is that Heim or ownership take their gas pedal off the gas a little bit because they overperformed so much this year. And they're ahead of schedule. I don't think Heim would even lie to you or John Henry or any of them if you said, like, they didn't see this coming. They didn't predict this. When they made their roadmap last offseason, this wasn't on there. This was supposed to be 2023, and then 2024, 5, 6 is when you win the World Series. But I hope they keep their foot on the gas, and I hope they don't rely on it. I said in our group chat the other day that I'm afraid we saw peak Hunter Renfroe this year, and October Hunter Renfroe is what he will be next year. I don't want that to happen, but I'm afraid that could happen, and Heim isn't going to do anything because, well, did you see Hunter Renfroe in the 2021 season? Or Kike, he's like, well, did you see Kike in the month of October? And things like that, I hope he builds off of it. Obviously, the bullpen needs work. Obviously, it seems like we have a good rotation going forward, and we have young rookies and like Garrett Whitlock and Hauk who can be starters. But I hope Heim builds it up and turns it into this race south, and he has the opportunity to spend money. And the next time we're in first place at July 30th, they dig a little deeper and they go get a little bit more and maybe makes the run. But I hope he gets there to where 2022, I would love what Matt's saying, and I could totally see them building off of it. But if you told me they almost throw out the same exact team they did this year with one bullpen piece added, and Heim just expects it to happen again, and it doesn't, and then they're a third or fourth place team next year, I wouldn't be surprised. I agree with what Matt said about the division. They proved that they're the best team in the hardest division. When the games counted, they beat the Rays. They beat the Yankees. They beat the Yankees in the season series. The Yankees are the first team ever to make the playoffs and had a losing record in their division against their division opponents. Like that, the Yankees are a good team, but they didn't play good. Like when it counted, the Red Sox played and mattered. If, like Matt said, if they were in the NL East, the Braves wouldn't even have made the playoffs. Now the Braves are in the World Series. So it gets, when you get hot, they're a good team. It's there. They can't take this as a win for say, and not improve. They have to take this as a big stepping stone, but go to the next level. And now 2022's goals should be higher than what they would have been before this year, looking forward.
Well, in closing, I'll say this. 2 things. I wouldn't be surprised if the starting rotation is just what you saw plus the addition of Hauk every day, and whether or not they bring back the guy that doesn't know how to wear a coat, he'd be a starter as well. And also, my guess is that Dave Roberts is probably going to see the end of the road here in the next week or so. And if that's the case, and I'm Chaim Bloom, I pick him up just to be an instructor, like a elementary school instructor on how to run the bases. But we'll get into the negatives about all that going forward, whether or not they should bring back Vasquez, whether or not Erod will make another start in Boston, some of the stuff that has happened in between, and we'll kind of take the gloves off this weekend. But in closing, thanks to everybody who joined us. Thanks to Matt. Thanks to Joey. They're the boys of Aging Ash and Sticky Balls. Look for our season ending and possibly future telling come this weekend of this unprecedented run by a team that really wasn't scheduled to go anywhere. So thanks again, guys. We'll talk soon. Thank you all to all you that listened. And if somebody can tell me when I'm going to go home, I'd appreciate it. Good night from Aging Ash and Sticky Balls. And watch this Red Sox team because they earned it this year.
They did.
Good night, guys.